Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fairfield County SCORE's live webinar on SEO Basics. Get found on Google. I'm Bud Freund, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at Fairfield County SCORE. I'll be your host today, and our presenter is Nalini Goolsarran. More on Nalini in just a moment. First, some brief information about SCORE. We are a nonprofit national partner of the Small Business Administration, and here in Fairfield County, we have over 100 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. First, free one-on-one counseling, face-to-face at times, video, phone, email, chat, which can be accessed via Request a Mentor link on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, or via the link on the screen. We do educational workshops and webinars, and somewhere over 150 a year. And finally, we have extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject experts at your disposal. Our next live webinar is next Wednesday, January 26 at noon, and the topic is how small businesses can thrive in 2022 with Anastasia Vladimetsky. I think I got that right. She'll be presenting. Look for the specifics on fairfieldcounty.score.org. We also have a large number of archived webinars on a wide range of business topics that can be viewed on demand via our website. Here's some useful information about today's event. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the Q&A window at any time during the presentation, and you'll find it along the Zoom bar on your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 o'clock to respect your time, and the session is being recorded, and the link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within the next few days. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Nalini Goolsarran. Nalini is the founder of EdgeSpace Marketing and is passionate about transforming business practices and streamlining communications. She has a BS in Computer Information Systems and experience in IT, project management, and communications. Before becoming an entrepreneur, she was an Associate Chief Operating Officer for a division of a global financial institution. Nalini believes in the strength of her community and regularly volunteers for organizations and causes that empower the next generation. Nalini, it's all yours. I think you're on mute. There you go.
And welcome everyone for coming today. I see some of the names. You have been to some of my webinars before. For those of you who have not come to my webinars, this one in particular, we're going to do quite a bit of discussion around what goes into your SEO. It's a pretty complex topic and it can get pretty overwhelming. My advice to you is this today. Many of the things that we're going to talk about, if you're not tech savvy, may seem overwhelming. If you can take two things away from today's webinar in terms of your ranking factors, implement those two things. Do not worry about the rest until you have more technical capabilities, or maybe you have someone like myself in your corner to help you with it, or maybe you have a friend or family member that can help you. Your ranking factors, which is going to be the majority of today's presentation, are quite extensive. And when I go through them, you'll understand. I'm going to show you what's called the periodic table of SEO elements. It is built upon things that I have learned over the years, the changing algorithm. So those of you who have come to a previous version of this class will have seen a different version of the periodic table. Every year we update it based on what's happening in the Googleverse. You may see periodic tables that have weighted factors against them in terms of what, you know, points you get. If you think of an algorithm as a gaming system where you get points for every good thing you do and you lose points for every bad thing, those are theoretically based and sometimes not necessarily accurate. So I don't want you to get too caught up in those things if you see that on other periodic tables and not what we discussed today. Where we are going to start with is, let's just discuss what is SEO. How do you get found on page 1 of Google? That's the most important thing that every business wants to know. Nobody wants to go to page 2, nobody wants to go to page 4, and some people just aren't even found at all. So how do we do that? So let's take a look at some numbers to start with. 68% of all online experiences begins with a search engine, and this number is always increasing. Think about your own behavior. When you think of SEO, think about how you use Google. If I'm trying to go to a website, more often I'm typing it into a search bar before I type in the actual such and such.com. I'm actually just Googling it, and then whatever pops up is where I go. SEO drives 1,000+% more traffic than organic social media. You still need social media as part of your entire digital marketing strategy for your business, but in reality, Google and how people find you on the internet in terms of Googling you, right, is more important than your social media. You still need it, but it is the most important tool for how your business gets found. And I'm going to say this once, those of you who follow me on social have heard me say it before, Facebook is not a placeholder for your website. There's not anything you can do from an SEO perspective with your Facebook, and your Facebook business page is not your website. So if you are a business and you only have a Facebook business page, I strongly recommend that you consider getting a website, because all the things you're going to learn today are specific to websites. Less than 1% of Google searchers click on results from the second page. It's a running joke. It's a pretty bad joke, but they say the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 of Google. No one goes there. I personally go there because I'm always looking to see where my clients are. So sometimes you'll find me looking at page 8, 9, and 10, trying to figure out where clients are ranking for certain things, but that's because that's my job. In terms of your usual end user, your potential clients, your actual clients, your customers, they're looking for you on page 1. And if you're not there, they might go to your competition. 53% of all web traffic comes from organic search. So there is a big difference between paid search and organic search. Paid search is when you go into Google, you type in something, and at the very top of the page, there might be 1 to 4 what's called sponsored ads. They're usually marked as sponsored. And if you think about your own behavior, majority of the time you're skipping right past that and you're going to what's showing up organically at the top. So what we're aiming for are those organic search. This statistic is quite old and you won't see it published anymore. Google has taken it down because they want you to pay for Google ads. But Google has previously said that 80% of users skip the paid ads and go right to the organic search. I know I do, and think about yourself. Ask around. How many people in your life actually click those paid ads? Most often they could be scams, they could be unreliable, and what people are really looking for is not that you paid to get on top, but what are everyone else clicking to get you there? Are you the real legitimate business? That expertise. You'll hear me talk about expertise, authority, and trust later on in the presentation. 70% of search queries contain 4 or more words. This is really, really important. When we get into what's called your keywords and your search intent, it's important to know how people are searching. So for example, people might be searching for digital marketing, or they might really be searching for web development, websites for small businesses, SEO for small businesses. All of those are 4 words or more. And so what they're looking at, or what Google's looking at, is what's called natural language processing. They are trying to get people to use more natural phrases, to type in a more natural manner, especially with voice search becoming more prevalent and those type of things. So it's becoming more and more important to know what your keyword phrases are along with your specific individual keywords. One of the biggest things that's growing right now are the phrases where to buy and near me. The reality is location-based searching is becoming very important. The last 2 years have skewed that quite a bit in 2 different ways. Prior to the pandemic, we found that more mobile users were using the near me feature, because if you think about it, you're in your car, you're trying to find a gas station near me, a coffee shop near me, the grocery store near me, or whatever your specific criteria is. Now what we're finding is that you're getting more desktop or tablet versions of that, because people are home, or they were home, searching for whatever they're looking for near me. And especially with small businesses, not many having, been able to reopen in time or didn't survive the pandemic, that's becoming increasingly important. So if you don't have your location data set up, that could be harming how people are finding you. 93% of global traffic comes from Google Search, Google Images, and Google Maps. Why is that important? This presentation today, I'm really covering Google search criteria. You're going to see Google throughout this. Yes, there's Bing. Yes, there's other types of search engines, but more often than not, people are using Google. Even iPhone users often have installed a Google app on their phone so they can search for what they want via Google's search engine. What I've noted here is Google Images and Google Maps. Those are two very important parts of your SEO that often gets looked over. The reason for that is your images, when you upload a file to your website, most times you might be taking that file from a stock library, you might be taking it from your phone, wherever you're getting it from, and half the time the image is labeled as image12345.jpg, and then you upload it to your website. Google has no way of knowing what that image is. Now, if you were to relabel that file and call it digital marketing, then Google knows that this image is related to digital marketing and it might improve the search criteria. You might even find headshots. Often clients have websites where they have headshots uploaded and then they're asking, how come in the Google image search then no one's finding them or they're not seeing their headshots? It's probably because their files were mislabeled. So you want to keep that in mind as part of that. Your Google Maps becomes important for your Google My Business listing. In the past, only businesses with physical locations could have a Google My Business listing. That changed in 2019. Right before the start of the pandemic, Google started allowing virtual businesses to have a Google My Business listing. I have a virtual business. So prior to the pandemic, prior to 2019, I couldn't have a Google My Business listing, and now I can as a virtual service. So if you don't have that set up, I strongly recommend you do that as well. So let's really talk about how SEO works. We kind of know why we need it, but really, how does it work? The really important part of this is that we are trying to increase the quantity and quality of the traffic to your website. You don't want scammers and spammers coming to your website. What you really want are your true potential clients coming to your website. And we want to do that via organic search engine results. So let's talk about how that really works. So when people want to do something, whether they want to find information, whether they want to buy something, whether they're looking for a place to do something, they go to Google and they type in their search criteria. Google is crawling the internet and gathering up all types of businesses and information that they have constantly. And they feed the search criteria that the user put in into their little algorithmic machine. And what they do is they take the information they have, they index it, and then they figure out, okay, so if this person is asking for, let's say, rock climbing in Stamford, Connecticut, that they're going to find local rock climbing businesses to match that. They don't want to show them a rock climbing business that's in California if the person is looking locally, right? Particularly because Google wants to stay as a search engine of choice. So they're constantly working on making sure that they're matching the user search criteria. So always keep that in mind. The key to all of this is the end user search intent, which we'll cover in the very next slide. And then last part is that knowing what are all the aspects and the factors. So as we talk about today, we're going to get into what is the user search intent, what does it mean, and then we'll talk about those ranking factors in a moment. But before that, here's a quick, very, very high level checklist that you should be having for your SEO. Did you identify your keywords using Google Trends or Google's Keyword Planner? I don't have Keyword Planner on here specifically because a lot of people don't have an ad account, which you need to set up. It's free to set up, but it can be a little complicated and intimidating. So Google Trends is a very good place to start. Did you configure your on-site and your off-site SEO? And this is when we get into the ranking factors, and you're going to figure out what are those 2 or 3 things that you understand from all the technicalities and that you can yourself implement. Did you configure your Google Analytics? It's very often I get clients that come to me that have had websites set up years and years ago, but their site analytics were not set up. And even worse, they never submitted their sitemap to Google Search Console. For those of you who are very interested in this part of it, Google Search Console or all the Google suite of tools, I'm covering that on February 22nd in optimizing your keywords for search. So that's where we're going to talk about how all of those components work together. So I'm not covering that today, but just so you know, that is part of your overall SEO checklist. And then lastly, set up your Google My Business. Again, so that you can get found on maps, and it's just all of those factors that feed your algorithm. So let's talk a little bit about that user search intent and what it means. When someone goes to the internet, when they go to Google, they are searching for a few different things. Their intent falls into one of 4 categories. Informational intent, where they are looking up something, where they're just trying to validate whether it's the definition of something. They're looking for information. They're trying to DIY something. Think about all of that. That's informational. You then have navigational intent. This is where they're trying to find the location of something. So the coffee shop near me, the gas station near me, those are all navigational intent because I intend to drive there or walk there or however I'm going to get there. You have a transactional intent. This means I'm coming to the internet to buy something. So that could be anywhere from groceries, because we can buy groceries online, to healthcare products, and the laundry list goes on. Most of us, if you're like me, have Prime and you pop open your Amazon Prime app, so you're not Googling anything. But there's other things that I do Google that I'm looking to buy online. And then you have commercial investigation. This falls a little bit between informational and transactional intent. And the reason that that is important is because that is for people that fall into a category of they're researching something to buy later. So that means that they could be trying to buy a washing machine. And what they're trying to do is compare what are the different price points and the different features and the functionalities and the company you're going to buy from, warranties, all of those details. And they're trying to figure out what is the best purchase option for them. So they're it's not strictly informational, it's not strictly transactional, it's commercial investigation is where that falls. And that's very important if you're in a product-based business where you're selling products and you're in a type of product that people will be researching and comparing. That's important for you because do you have the necessary information on your website to support the commercial investigation? So that's why that's important in its own category. When you know your keywords, what you're trying to do is implement your keywords with the intent specific words. So for example, as I mentioned before, let's use rock climbing as an example. You probably identified your keywords as rock climbing gym, but did you identify your intent specific words as rock climbing gym in this location? Right? That's the difference between knowing just your keyword and knowing your intent specific keywords. So that's where if you know what the users are looking for, you then make sure that your keywords match their criteria. At the end of the day, Google is trying to find as close to an exact match as possible for the end user. It's not about your business as much as it's about the end user. So what you want to do is to support that cause is ensure that the content that you're writing on your website, it fits the terms that people are searching for as well as the search intent. You're going to hear that very often. What were people searching for, but what was their intention when searching for it? This goes into a bigger discussion around the customer journey and the navigation on your website when we get to the ranking factors. All of these matter. If someone is doing a commercial investigation for washing machines and they land on your website because you sell washing machines, and it's showing you all the details of what this washing machine has, what they can get, but then there's no buy now button. That does not match some of their user intent later on because maybe they become ready to buy after reading the content and then they end up on a competitor's website. So that's why it's important to understand what their intent is. You may not always know their intent. It's a guessing game, but you should have a general idea of what they're looking for. Make sure that your page or post is informational when people are looking for information. It is very often that people are looking for information and they end up on a sales page. If you're selling something, sell it. If you're providing information, provide information, and just be very careful about that fine line between selling and providing informational details. One way that we see this happen is, for example, recipe bloggers. I'm a foodie, I like to cook, and I oftentimes find that sometimes you get on a recipe page and you're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, you can't get to the recipe, and you end up getting frustrated and you move off to a different website to try to find the recipe you're looking for. That is part of the SEO ranking factors that could negatively impact that website. What we find is Google is tracking all of those details and saying that, oh, somebody came to the website, they left really fast and they went to a competitor. Google's tracking all of that because Google realizes that, okay, maybe you didn't fit the needs, so you may not need to be number one, but number two, they stuck around on. Those are some things that Google is doing to make sure that the algorithm is working in the favor of the end user. You want to be very, very careful to make sure that you're showing up for the first result when someone is searching for your company name. It is so often that, like, when you're looking for, many of you who are going to leave the presentation today, if you're interested, you may go look up EdgeSpace Marketing. And you may not type in edgespacemarketing.com in the bar. You might just go to Google and type in EdgeSpace Marketing, and hopefully I show up as number one. I do show up as number one. I did that right. But that is what you're aiming for. I even show up as number one for my name. I should show up for my name because I have a unique name. Those are some of the things that people leave out of their SEO that is very, very important. Then you also have providing content that helps people make an informed decision. This goes right into the commercial investigation category, and it might even fall into a transactional category. You never know. Sometimes someone is looking to say, okay, I want to make a decision on something. I need to hire a plumber. I need to hire an electrician. And if you're one of those fields, you want to make sure you're showing up for them and you're providing them information that'll help them make the decision to hire you, or maybe just stay on your website and you become the person of choice for them as they look to DIY things, if that's what you provide. And then lastly, as you're on the commercial investigation or these other pages, part of your user navigation is that if they're coming to buy one of your products, please make sure that they land on your sales page and not your about page and things like that. When we get into some of the ranking factors, it's often that we see people mix up what information goes on which page. If you have an about page that has services as the title or description, and people are now thinking they're ending up on the services page and they end up on the about page, that's a confusing navigation, and that could impact how they look for you and how they use your services. It'll also, Google will figure out that that's a confusing dialogue in terms of how that transaction works or that navigation works, and will penalize you for that. So let's talk about those ranking factors. I keep talking about it, so let me show you what they are. This is what I call the periodic table of SEO elements. What you're looking for here are your on-page SEO and your off-page SEO. You have violations or blockings, which I would hope none of you have any of those on your website. What we're gonna do in the next 20, 30 minutes or so before we take questions is go through each one of these verticals and explain what these different elements are. And like I said before, don't try to absorb all of them. They can be a little complicated and complex. There are some repetitiveness because they work together, but what you'll find is at some point you'll probably take away 2 or 3 of these. So there are a few types of ranking factors. All of these on-page and off-page ranking factors fall into 5 categories. Domain level, which is your www. Page level, which is the home page, about page, those specific things. Site level. And what that is that if you look at this periodic table is where the architecture comes in. That's where Google's looking at the specificities of how your website is set up. User intention, so we just covered how the user intent influences the search and how you're matching that. And then penalizations. So penalizations are all your violations and your blocking. Google holds those against you very heavily. So one of the things to keep in mind is that no single one of these factors will guarantee your SEO performance. They all work in combinations. And that's why I mentioned earlier, you do find some repetitiveness across the different categories as we go through this. And while several positive factors will increase your SEO ranking, if you have any one of the negative factors or even more of that, it's a weighted score. It's held against you even more so than if you have positive. So you have to be very careful with the weighted factors. The one in particular, which I'll point out right now, are ads and intrusiveness. Most websites tend to either have paid ads spread out through the website, which is just a poor user experience, and then they have just intrusive pop-ups and things that block, especially on a mobile website. That becomes very annoying. Sign up for our newsletter, or do you want more of this, or do you want more of that? So keep that in mind. And when we get to that slide, we'll talk about that in quite a bit of details. So let's talk about content. What is the content on your website? Essentially, that is the words, images, videos, the actual stuff that's on the website, which most people are familiar with. The first thing and the most important thing that you want to keep in mind is the quality of your content. Is it well written? Is it free of grammatical errors? Is it actually on topic, or does it just go sideways and ends up conversational? If you're writing a blog, that makes total sense. But if you're a business, if I have a website that's about digital marketing and you land on my website and I'm talking about dance, because I'm also a dancer, you might be confused as to why you're there. Are you like, am I even on the right website? So this is where the whole user search intent comes from. Somebody was looking for digital marketing, lands on my website, but the content on my website is poor quality and doesn't match their search criteria. Research. This is part of, when you're starting a business, you need to do that competitive analysis and build your business plan. You need to research your keywords. Check what Google Trends is saying. What are people actually searching for? Figure out that search intent. See what your competition is doing, but please see what your competition is doing with a grain of salt. I just had a consultation this morning with a client where he has a report of like the competitors are, spending $50,000 on Google Ads in this type of field. And the reality is when we went and cross-checked some of those criteria, we're finding that the keywords they're using weren't actually performing in Google Trends. So your competition could be paying or could be configuring their SEO without the right user search intent in mind. So while you want to beat the competition with the user search intent, not necessarily what you think the users are. Go to Google Trends and validate it. Answer answer their questions. Use the copy. So when we say copy, we're talking about the content, the words on your page. Use the words on your page to answer their questions and pain points. Again, if you're a DIYer and someone's trying to put up bookshelves, answer the questions about how they put up the bookshelf. What do they need to do? What is information they need? What are their tools? Things like that. Engagement. You're going to see this one kind of pop up in a couple of different places. And apologies, should say keywords, but it's also the same thing. So keywords and engagement kind of go hand in hand. So this is engaging content that aims to solve problems or answers to questions of your audience. So in 2020 and earlier, this was the name that Google or that we in the digital marketing world gave to the keywords. So this should have been changed. Apologies. Keywords are those keyword phrases that you researched before, and then you have engaging content that intersperses those keywords, right? Those user search intents are included in your copy, not just thrown out as a title, but in the body of the paragraph. It's written out in plain language. Google uses something called natural language processing. What they're trying to do is match how people really talk, how people really interpret and understand information. So use, again, the copy on your page to answer their questions, do your research, and make sure it's engaging. Freshness. How often do you update your website or your website copy? This can be a little challenging for businesses that have what's called static websites. If you're a service-based business, like say a chiropractor, you offer the same set of services year over year, not much changes, and you don't have a lot of budget to update your website every year, but websites can be expensive and not every business has that. So how do you maintain freshness? A lot of people find that writing blogs or articles are a great way to do that. Every time you add a page or update a page on your website, Google, if you've submitted your sitemap to Google, Google will re-index your website. This will help it move to the top of the rankings because Google is saying this content is fresh and new. So keep that in mind. That's why you find websites have blogs. I do get that question, like, why do I need to blog? It's to keep your website fresh and up to date. And then lastly, multimedia. This is a new category that we brought in 2021 that's super important. The images, images, videos, and audio are all important ways of delivering high quality content. But keep in mind that while you're uploading this type of multimedia to your website, they're not slowing down your website because page speed, which we'll see in the next couple slides, is very important. So please make sure your images are compressed. And something that's very important is make sure that the largest dimension, whether it's wide or tall, is no more than 2,000 pixels. If you keep that in mind, your images will be optimized for web, mobile, and any type of high resolution device. You don't need an 8,000 pixel picture on your website. No one will render it more than 2,000. It'll get compressed down. Videos should be uploaded to YouTube or Vimeo and then linked to your website. They're embedded. And the reason for that is, this is very, very important, is that videos have to be optimized for all the different screen sizes, whether it's, the different types of phones, Android to iPhone, to the various versions of iPhone, various version of Android. Screens are wider and smaller, taller and shorter, and the video has to get optimized for each and every one of those. Now, if you had to do that on your website, you're doing a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of complex coding. YouTube and Vimeo has figured out the science behind that. So if you load the video to Vimeo and YouTube and just embed it on your website, you'll be good to go, and they're doing the heavy lifting, not your website. Same goes for audio. You can do the same thing and then backlink it to your website by an embed. HTML. Now, in today's modern age of websites, we are not writing code anymore. I build WordPress, Wix, Squarespace websites. We don't write code to do any of it. Especially on WordPress, we use plugins like Elementor that creates a drag and drop interface, those type of things. So why is HTML so important? At the end of the day, Google takes your website, dumps it over to code, and interprets it that way so that it can feed it through its algorithm, right? At the end of the day, your website is still a bunch of code. No matter if the interface is drag and drop or what your experience is, that's what the back end is doing. So these are parts of it that become important for your SEO and parts that you can control. So one of the most important places is the HTML title tag. So you don't often see this, and you may not understand it. The title tag is at the top of the browser bar that says what the page is about. It's also in Google when you're searching for a search result, it will say what the title of the page is. And sometimes you'll see different versions of it that have commas, colons, what's called a pipe, which is a straight up and down line separating themes, thoughts, or locations. So that's your title tag. It's a great place to put in some of those keywords. And I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. Your meta description. So when you Google something, you have a title of what the page is, and then you have a paragraph. Usually it used to be a paragraph. Now you get a sentence, maybe 150 characters for what that page is about. So this is where you want to make sure you're clear about what users are going to find on that page, but also include some of those keywords that'll match their search intent. This gets a little creative. It's like writing a tweet. You only have so many characters. You got to fit everything in. But your website should have multiple pages, so you have different places to include some of those different keywords or keyword phrases. You've got your header tags. Throughout your website, you are going to have sections, right? Every page has a section. You have your major title. So let's talk about, let's say, the About Us page. The About Us page has the title that says the major title, which should be in an H1 tag that says About Us. Underneath that might be your mission statement, your values. It might include meet the founders, meet the team. Those are subheadings that should be an H2 tag. And then underneath those might be further subheadings. So if I use my example as an example, my website as an example, you have the About Us page at the top that says H1 tag, that's in the H1 tag. You have the meet the team title in an H2 tag, and then myself and the people on my team, our names are in H3 tags. So if you think about back in college or even high school when you wrote papers, you had a heading, subheading, sub-subheading. It's the same concept. And what you want to do is use your H1 tags, or it's a number through 6, H1 through H6. Use them smartly, because what you're doing is organizing the page and via code, the HTML, telling Google where the important information is. File names. So I just mentioned in the last slide about your images. This is where you want to make sure you're renaming all your files before you upload them to your website. Your files being image. So if I were to take my headshot that my headshot photographer sent me, they're written in a naming convention that was his. Might be headshot, full color, Nalini. Those aren't all the keywords that I need. What I did is I renamed the file as Nalini Goolsarran Digital Marketing, or I could have named it Nalini Goolsarran EdgeSpace Marketing, because those are all keywords I want together. So I show up for either one of those. And when I rename it, they save it as a JPEG, and then I upload it to my website. So when Google's interpreting that for its algorithm, Google's saying, okay, Nalini Goolsarran, EdgeSpace Marketing, this is useful information for the algorithm, for the user search intent. Alt text. So this is called the alternative text for an image. This is for ADA compliance. So in this space, you want to describe the image. So it could be describing the same headshot as, business owner Nalini Goolsarran, and then separating by a comma some of those keywords. Digital marketing Stanford, web development, small businesses. It's a place to put that in. Be very careful and judicious how you use your keywords. When we get into the violation category, you don't want to overuse your keywords. There's no math that I know of that says, if you use it 5 times versus 10 times, Google has their own way of judging if you're keyword stuffing or overusing the keywords. Architecture. So this can be a little technical and this can be a little daunting, but don't worry about it too much if you don't get it. Google is crawling your website constantly. It's constantly crawling things on the internet. If you build a brand new website, right, and you go to Google it today, if I build it today, make it live, and tomorrow you go to Google it, there's a very slim chance you'll even find it because Google hasn't had a chance to crawl the website or index it yet. And if you don't submit your sitemap to Google, what ends up happening is you're getting to the back of the line. So Google might have 60,000 websites in front of you. They all got to get crawled before you do. But if you submit your sitemap to Google, you're right away telling Google, hey, I'm a brand new website and I need you to index me. Google jumps you to the front of the line. Here's what's even better. With the sitemap submitted to Google, every time you update your website, if you're using Wix, WordPress, or Squarespace, other platforms, not on Shopify, excuse me, other platforms, not so guaranteed, but these 4 platforms, your sitemap is automatically updated. You only have to submit it one time. And every time you make a change to your website, you update a page, the sitemap gets updated to say this page was updated. And what that means is Google will move you to the front of the line to get re-indexed. And that's what we want. The more we get re-indexed, more chances we get to show up at the first page of Google. Next up, we want to talk about mobile responsive. We live in the day and age of cell phones, tablets, even computers are getting smaller and smaller. So if your website is only designed as a desktop version, you're going to have a really hard time pleasing your end users who are using their phone, tablets, and small computer screen. You're also going to frustrate Google. Google is actually indexing your website mobile first. then desktop. So when I design websites, especially WordPress, right? We're using Elementor. We flip it to the mobile view to make sure all the elements are performing the way they need to perform on a mobile device. Did images stack the way they need to? Did that text stay on screen? Did it go off screen? Did it even come down to a size that's legible? Sometimes when you're dealing with desktop versions of a website on a mobile phone, have you ever done this? You get on the website and the font is all squished up and you can't read it? That's what's frustrating to you and your end users, so be very careful to make sure your website is mobilely responsive. Site speed. You have 8 seconds to get someone's attention, whether it's social media, whether it's Google. Here's what's wrong, or not wrong, but works against you in this space. You have 8 seconds from the time somebody starts typing in their search criteria. Someone goes to Google, they type in EdgeSpace Marketing, that has to load, 1 second has gone by. They scan the list, another second has gone by. They click the link, another second have gone by. I've lost 3 seconds already in my 8-second window. Now they're waiting for the web page to load. And if that web page does not load within 2 seconds or more, or 2 seconds or less, chances are they think it's broken, it's a scam, they don't have any patience, they go back and they click the next one on the list. You don't want that to happen. So site speed becomes very important. Now, there's a whole lot of tools on the internet that will tell you about coding issues and all kinds of stuff that even as a technical person, I don't understand some of it. Focus on the things you can control. Are your images optimized? Do you have files that are too big on your website that are taking too long to load? When the person who designed your website designed it, does the whole thing load as once or just pieces of it? It could be even an issue with where your website's hosted. Like, is there a performance issue there? Is it a specific time of day where your website's always slow? That means something's happening at your host level, and that's not even on you and nothing you can do if it's happening at the same time every day. There's a backup running or something, and you need to talk to them about that. But these are all factors that you can control and that you can try to figure out. But don't worry about those giant reports that tell you about JSON and Java and those things that you're like, I have no idea what that means. I don't know what they mean too, and I'm pretty technical. Are your URLs descriptive? This is particularly an issue for WordPress websites. The default setting for WordPress websites are page ID 123. I see it very often when I get old WordPress websites that need to be rebuilt. It was the file structure and the naming convention was not changed. So instead of saying edgespacemarketing.com/about us, it said edgespacemarketing.com/page ID 123. Your end users don't know what page ID 123. Google doesn't know what page ID 123 is. And again, another place to put in keywords. So my website says, on the services page, it could just say services, but I have my URL saying digital-marketing-services because I know people are Googling digital marketing services. So that's a way of getting creative with the URL without making the page name super long for what people call the tabs across the top. The tab itself is still named services. Duplicate content. This is a big one. Often we find that sometimes when you're building your website, writing the copy, you may not have a copywriter budget or on staff. And so you're trying to figure out, what do I say on this page that's different than the last page, and you're repeating yourself. Be very careful about that. Google will penalize you for that. It's not a big penalization factor where you get dropped down pages and pages, but what it does do is that it says, okay, somebody else who has more distinct information on their pages has more expertise and authority in that space, and they're going to move up. When we get into reputation, I'll explain that a little bit more. But it's important not to duplicate your content across pages, but don't duplicate somebody else's content. It's very easy to go to the internet and start Googling and looking for the information you want to include on your website, which is great, but make sure then you're making it your own words. Just like when you're writing a paper in college, right? No plagiarism. Try not to do the same thing when you're writing your website copy. HTTPS, security. This is becoming a bigger issue than it used to be. Before, all websites that were e-commerce, meaning they were selling something, were the only websites that were required to have this. Think about the things that we used to be taught, well, for me it was college, where they would teach us all the time that if you're going to purchase something online, you're looking for the lock icon in the browser bar, you're looking for HTTPS, you're looking for that guarantee that there's an SSL certificate on that website, there's security before you complete that transaction. Now, in the last 3 to 5 years, Google has mandated that all websites across the globe have this HTTPS. And if you do not have the SSL certificate installed, what you will find is that your users, after a period of time, may get a warning screen that says, are you sure you want to go to this website? It's not safe. and that could be problematic. So SSL certificates, there's some free ones. They can be provided by your hosting provider. It all depends on where you have it set up. If you're using like Wix or Squarespace, it comes automatically when you get the domain name through them. So it can be setting that up is pretty straightforward if you have the right provider. So just look into that if you don't have your SSL certificate yet. And then lastly, your website structure. So we started this slide by talking about your sitemap. Your sitemap is a list of all the pages and images and all the things that are on your website. But sometimes we find that people get a little too creative trying to use their keywords in places. And sometimes it's not even about keywords. So for example, you're on a website, 90% of users, when they come to websites, are looking for home, about us, services, contact us, maybe an FAQ, maybe a blog, right? And if you're a service-based business, probably pricing, right? And then of course, if you're product-based, your list of products, so they shop now. You would be surprised how many websites you go to and you can't find the hours. Usually hours go on the contact us page and you're looking all over and you don't know when they're open. Can't find their address. It also belongs on the contact us page or on the footer of the website. But then where they get very creative is instead of saying about us and services, they might say our story and how we can help. Now, that's just a bit of a confusing nuance in terms of making sure people know that's what you mean when they're just looking for about us and they're just looking for services. Use the on-page content to get creative with the titling and how you help and those type of things. The tabs and your navigation across the top, keep it straightforward, keep it simple, and don't get overly creative. It confuses Google, confuses the user. Other thing to keep in mind, keep them in the correct order. The order of, it's kind of like, for those of you who remember PEMDAS, right? Order of operations matter. For your tabs across the top, most navigations expect home, about us, services, FAQ, blog, contact us. Those last three can be in a little bit of a different order, but most people expect about us to come after home, and they definitely are expecting contact us to be the very last one. It helps them because that's just what they normally do. If you make the navigation crazy, you frustrate the user and the user leaves your website, which then impacts your bounce rate, and we'll get into some of those details in a second. How long somebody stays on your website matters. So let's talk about links. There's good links and there's bad links. So you have your link quality, which are outgoing, so links in general, the links outgoing and incoming to your website. What you're looking for is to make sure you're linking to reputable organizations, reputable websites. A lot of us get emails and messages and Instagram messages from scammers all the time saying, hey, I have a link farm. Do not buy links from a link farm, I beg you. 90% of those are bad links. They're flagged in some database at Google and they're called, and you'll get low link quality scores on those. So if you have bought them, okay, try to get rid of them. But if you haven't bought them and you're considering it, please don't. You're really going to hurt your SEO ranking. And it's important. So for me, on my website, I have outgoing links that go to my strategic partners. I have outgoing links that go to my social media pages. All of those are reputable places. And then I have outgoing links going out to SCORE and other organizations that I teach classes for, so that those are all reputed organizations. And it's feeding, when we get to reputation, my expertise and authority in the space. If I'm teaching classes, I'm viewed as an expert. So Google's increasing my expertise factor. If more people are coming, and if SCORE now is linking back to me because SCORE is recognized as an authority in the place for business consulting, now I've gotten some authority points from Google around, okay, so this person is an expertise and they have authority. So keep in mind that the quality of your links, and that's very, very important. So if you're having backlinking issues, look at where your links are coming from and where they're going. It's really difficult if somebody from a bad website is linking to you. You can't really change that. So just worry about your outgoing links and focus on that. There are directories and libraries you can get listed on. If you're part of a chamber of commerce, see if they'll link out to your website. Those are all good links that'll give you expertise and authority. Coming back to the left side of the screen, talking about anchors and quantity. So anchors, sometimes you'll find as on one page websites, or even other websites, I do this too, where it's multi-pages, but there's sections on a page. So an About Us for a nonprofit might have their mission statement, board of directors, stakeholders, sponsors on the same page. And from the menu at the top, the tabs, there's a drop down and you click it and it jumps to that section on the page. That's called an anchor. So what we're looking for here is, do your anchor text match the destination. So if the anchor text name is board of directors and you land on board of directors, you're good to go. But if your anchor text says board of directors and you end up on mission statement, that's a bit of a confusing navigation, and Google is paying attention to that. Sometimes people make a mistake in that place and they don't pay attention to how their anchors are set up because it's a little nuanced and they can be confusing. Quantity. The number of links you have on a website kind of varies. There's been times where Google has said, we don't care how many outgoing and incoming links you have. And then now they're saying, well, yeah, actually we do. But what I say is focus on the quality of those links before you focus on the quantity. But what you do want to make sure is that within your website, you have internal links. Meaning on your homepage, as you go through the customer journey on the homepage, do you have buttons and call to actions that take you to other part of the website? If your website is set up where you want to drive setting up consultations, do you have buttons and call to actions that drive people to the section of your website where they can set that up? My website is personally set up as it's set up with the design of a landing page only. I don't have too many call to actions on the homepage because most people that come to my website, like yourselves, are probably going there to validate, who is this person? Is she legitimate? Most of my business is referral based, and I don't really take a lot of cold calls from the internet because I've just learned that's not working for me. So I've set mine up deliberately that way. But if you're a type of business where you depend on appointments, you depend on consultations, make sure that it's right there where people can schedule their consultations and get their appointments. Let's talk about trust. Trust is very important, and you'll see the word anchors has repeated itself here again. So let's start with history. When you're looking at a website and how long it's been around, you as the end users may not know how long that website's been around, but Google does. Google's checking about how long that domain, how long ago was it bought, and then is there anything on that domain? Can they actually get what they're looking for when they get to that domain? And then it says here, older, more established websites may find that they can keep cruising along, showing up at the top of the list, whereas newer ones have to pay their dues. Because just Google doesn't know if you're an authority, if you have the expertise, can they trust you? Because they want to make sure that they're serving up viable and trustworthy sources to the end user who's typing in their search criteria. My website's been around for more than 4 years. I have quite a bit of trust and authority in that space, and I have a history. When I first built my website, that first year, you couldn't find me on page 1 of Google for some of the things because I was too new. Now I have my trust and authority. I can show up at the top because I have the history to support it. Again, with the anchors. Earlier, Google was judging the anchors in terms of where they go and what they say. What Google is also paying attention to, very often anchors are where the links are broken. If you have broken links on your website, you will get penalized by Google for that. It's not falling in the violations category, but it will not help you. So keep in mind, check for broken links. You know, we redesign, we move things around, and we forget. So if you have something linking from 4 different places, check all 4 places that those links work still. Shares. Get your website content shared in text, emails, and social media. What that is doing, so for example, today's class, I sent the link that I have on my website for registration for the class that goes to SCORE's website to a bunch of family members and friends that I said, you have businesses, you may be interested in coming, click the link. So when they click the link, Google is saying, oh, somebody clicked a direct link on that website. That's a share because they got to a very specific page, not via Google, but from somewhere else. And that's a good indicator to them that the site is trustworthy because people are sharing it amongst themselves. So you want to keep that in mind when you're building out your website, especially when it's brand new, even if it's been along for a while. Ask your friends and family to go take a look at your website. And after they take a look at your website, you want them to have a very good user experience. Your website layout, ease of navigation, is it confusing? Does it make sense? Having a pretty website is great, but is it navigatable, right? Lastly, you want to talk about your user intent. We talked about this extensively at the beginning, but it is a very, very important part of how your website functions. When you look at your Google Analytics, for those of you who may come to the next class, we're going to start talking about your bounce rate. Your bounce rate is how long somebody stays on your website before they leave, the percentage of time. And the average user stays on a website for less than 1 minute. Think about how much information you're trying to get them to synthesize in less than 1 minute. So you just need to make sure that your website is reaching them in terms of what their search intent was. Locality. When they're searching for near me, if you have a physical business that has a physical location, if you're a coffee shop in Stamford, Connecticut, you want people to find you in Stamford, Connecticut, not showing up in California, not showing up elsewhere, or not showing up at all. So make sure that you have your location information on your website. User engagement and their personal history. Google measures how long somebody stays on your website and if they clicked any of your internal links. So this is going into your bounce rate and goes back to the user search intent. This particular section gets a little repetitive, as I mentioned before, because Google's measuring the same stuff in different ways. So you don't have a lot of control over how long somebody stays on your website, technically. But the reason someone stays on your website is because it's engaging, it's interesting, they're looking for more information. The bounce rate from my website can be about 80%, meaning 80% of the time someone stayed on my website for less than 10 seconds. That's totally okay for me because I know for my business and what I want, people are coming there to say, this is a legitimate business. Where's the email? Where's the phone number? And they got what they need and they've moved on. If that's your type of business, that's okay. If I had 100% bounce rate, I have a problem. That means 100% of the time people are sticking around for nothing. That means that the page may be loading too long. It's not a good navigation. It's visually unappealing. There's any number of reasons why someone won't stay on your website. And if no one is staying on your website, something's definitely wrong. And then lastly, what country are they based in? This one's a little more nuanced. And the reason for that is that different countries have different laws, and that is important to Google. So there's not much you can do in that space, but just keep in mind that if you're US based, put US on your website somewhere, whether it's a contact page or otherwise. But if you have your locality in there, it's kind of covered. Mine just says Fairfield County, Stamford, Connecticut, in different places. Google knows that's in the United States. I don't need to say it. So let's quickly talk about those violations, right? We've got the high level categories are thin, cloaking, stuffing, ads, intrusive, and malware. Here are some questions to ask yourself to not get in these categories. Is your website light on content? I did a consultation with one of my strategic partners. Her SEO wasn't working. She wasn't showing up for Google for her own marketing services. And what we realized was that her homepage had no content. So we kept an eye on it and we started including content so that she can show up for those user search intents. Don't overuse your keywords. Don't pay for backlinks. Don't hide content or stuff keywords. And please, please, please do not put text in the white font on the white space, meaning, next to the word blocking, I can put some font and hide it there. Google knows and you will be severely penalized for that. And don't pay for ads that make your page top heavy with ads, and do not have intrusive pop-ups. Having a mailing list pop-up is fine, but don't have too many of those. And if you can do away with the pop-up and just put it on page, do that. You'll do yourself a favor. So just a quick look at some best practices before we have a few minutes left for questions. Here's where we talked about renaming the file. The original file name was image and a bunch of gibberish. Renamed it to Digital Marketing Stamford, Connecticut. My URL structure could have been example.com/page ID and a bunch more gibberish, or maybe I was testing something and it's test page 123, but instead I could use those keywords and say services, best practices for SEO. It's a good place to do that. And then lastly, this whole title, text, and location, you can see here where using the pipe, I separated my business name from the service from the location. It's a really good place to include some of that detail. And then of course, make sure you use your keyword combinations in the alt tag of your images. So just a quick recap of your important SEO aspects. Identify your keywords with Google Trends, configure your on-page and off-page SEO, configure your Google Analytics, submit your sitemap to Google Search Console, and please be sure to set up your Google My Business. So now I know I've just inundated you guys with a ton of information, but do we have any questions in the chat or the Q&A section?
Nalini, the good news is that you have given people information that they understand, which is why there are a number of questions for you. If they didn't get it, they wouldn't be asking questions. So let's get to them. The first one is, how do we set up Google My Location?
So, and I see there's also a second question there on the same thing. So what you want to do is, ironically, you're going to go to Google and you're going to type in Google My Business. When you go to Google My Business, there's a login, and then Google has the steps to walk you through it. If you come to class on February 22nd, we'll talk in detail about how to set that up.
Okay, moving on to the third question, since you, same thing for virtual business, by the way?
Yeah, virtual businesses, it's a two-step process and it's a little nuanced, but it's the same exact process. You Google My Business, and then they'll take you to the login for that.
Here's an interesting one for you. We are a nonprofit who provides affordable housing to low-income families. How can we drive donors or traffic to our website. Does SEO apply here?
So that's an interesting question. The answer is yes, SEO does apply. What we have to figure out for your business is what is the user search intent? And that might take a little bit more research than just, other businesses or service-based. Like for example, you have twofold on this. You have the people who are looking for the affordable housing. So you may want to reach them via SEO, or maybe they're coming to you via, government agencies or stuff. So maybe that doesn't apply. But in terms of attracting your vendors, what you're going to try to figure out is what is the intent of your users who are searching. So for example, someone like myself, where I am very much interested in how do we solve for affordable housings for low income families, right? Like the, housing and scarcity, that's a big problem. So we go to Google Trends and we'll start typing in different search criteria to see what people are searching for in that space. And in your case, probably you would want to aim for informational search intent. So someone's searching for information on how you're resolving it, how you work, and those type of things may that drive you to your website. And those folks who are looking into that information may then become your donors and sponsors. So it's a little bit of a two-step for you as well. But start with that user search intent around how can you provide useful information to your donors in terms of what are their aspirational values, what are they interested in.
Thank you, Nalini. Next question is, how do you submit your sitemap? Do you do it only once?
Yes, you do it only once. You will go to your Google Search Console after you set up your Search Console, and on the left side of your screen, there's actually they made it very easy now. You type in sitemap, and they give you a location to type in your sitemap. The question that a lot of people ask is, what is my sitemap? How do I know what it is? Like, is it sitemap_index? Is it sitemap whatever? So the first thing you do is go to Google and figure out what your platform. If you have WordPress, just do WordPress sitemap, and see what they'll give you the naming convention, right? And then you'll just, search for it. And when you come to class on the 22nd, I'll explain in detail how you find that.
Next thing, also related to the sitemap, is how can you tell if your sitemap is submitted to Google Search Console?
When you go into the Search Console, on the left side of the screen, when you click on Sitemap, it'll bring up a new panel. And in the panel, it'll show you what's been submitted for your sitemaps. It'll tell you the date it was submitted and when the last time it was read. If it's saying there's an error, that means that the sitemap name was probably incorrect or it couldn't be read. Then you might need to submit a new one and just see what's going on with your sitemap. But Google, if you go out of sitemaps on Google Search Console, you'll be able to see.
Thank you, Nalini. Next question is, have you worked with Shopify sites, and how does SEO work with those sites? How can you make Shopify e-commerce sites perform well for an SEO standpoint?
So yes, I've worked with Shopify websites, and they do have their own places where you put in your SEO keywords, the title, the meta. Then the general rules are about the same. Alt text on images, file names are the same, like in terms of naming them for your products and those type of things. And then making sure that you fill in where they give you the SEO friendly boxes for your title and your description for your pages. Competitive wise, it's a little more challenging on an e-commerce space. Like if you're selling handmade handbags, you're going to have a hard time competing with Macy's and some of those other brands that have huge expertise and authority in that space. So then maybe it's women-owned handbags or those type of things. So get a little niche in your keywords.
Thank you. If your website has a place for user reviews, such as awarding stars or writing comments, does Google take into consideration negative reviews and/or your lack of response to them?
That's a very good question. The reviews directly on your website for products is a bit nuanced, and we don't know for sure how Google's interpreting that. Reviews on your Google My Business, the answer is yes. They're taking into account the negative reviews and your lack of response to them and such. On your website is probably a good practice to respond to the reviews if you have the bandwidth, and particularly the negative ones, to try to respond to them in a positive way. I do recommend a bit of an all or nothing approach. If you're going to do it, do all of them. If you're not going to do it, do none of them, just because the haphazardness of it can be a little off-putting to your end user. Google may not care, but your users will care.
Great, thank you. How long should alt text on images be? How many words?
That's a very good question. I try to say stick to around 10 because you're going to have more than, maybe 5 images for your website. That's a good enough place. And the reason that you want to do 10 is because most times you don't have enough keywords to do more than 10 words per image. And so you don't want to get into keyword stuffing.
So just to follow up on that, if I'm hearing you correctly, you should be renaming your image files with the same alt text that you're using in the words?
Not necessarily. So, for example, my headshot that I was using as an example, the file name is Nalini Goolsarran, Stamford, Connecticut. But the alt text on it may say digital marketing, Stamford, Connecticut, small business owner, Stamford, Connecticut, women-owned business, Stamford, Connecticut. Like those could be the alt text on my image, but the file name was only my name and digital marketing maybe.
Got it. Final question, because we're running out of time. Do you recommend Elementor Pro over the free version?
I do. The free version is pretty good. I used it for a long time as an agency, and because we carry, we build a lot of websites, we use the pro version. But as a user, if you have the budget for the pro version, go for it. It's a very powerful tool. Otherwise, the free version is pretty substantial.
Okay, and with that, I want to thank you, Nalini. We've used our questions, and as a reminder, a recording of this webinar and the materials are going to be available within a couple of days on fairfieldcounty.score.org. Our next live webinar is next Wednesday, January 26th at noon, and the topic is how small businesses can thrive in 2022. Again, SCORE offers free individual counseling, so please use the link on the screen or visit our website and click Request a Mentor. Also, please fill out your evaluations that have been sent at the end of the webinar. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's webinar. And in closing, a very big thank you to Nalini for presenting. Stay well, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming.